In this 3ds Max tips and tricks videos, I'm gonna explain you how to use the new Arnold Shape operator, which can be found in pflow. Just before I dive into the example, I want to show you guys my render setup. So in the render setup, my render is set to Arnold. Also, my active shading is set to Arnold, and I'm using the latest version of Arnold, so you can easily identify if you're running the latest version of Arnold in the Arnold Renderer tab. So this is the version. If there's a new version available, it's mentioned here, and you can go directly to the solid angle or the renderer, arnoldrenderer.com website, where you're able to download the latest version of the plugin. I have one tree textured, obviously. I have a ground plane, and I've placed one Arnold Light. So if I select the Arnold Light, if I go into modify, as you can see, it's a sky dome light. I've changed the resolution to 4K, changed the format to the latitude longitude, and I'm using the light shape visible option in the shape rendering. And in the color intensity rollout, I've been using the texture option where I've placed an HDR. And the HDR itself is obviously it's a spherical HDR. So I dragged it into the Slate Material Editor. I double clicked on there. Let me quickly show you that as well. So in the Slate Material Editor, this is the HDR, and it's set to an environment spherical, because that's going to be used for my light and reflections and so on. So first things first, what you can do in pflow. So let me open up pflow by using the 6 shortcut key on my keyboard. That's opening particle view in an empty state. I'm just gonna drag in a standard flow. Okay, I'm gonna drag in the standard flow to the grid, and then I'm gonna change the basic parameters. So I start with the event to the birth. I'm not gonna do animation, just gonna scatter trees. So the emitter starts at 0, and the emitter also stops at 0. So I'm right-clicking the spinner. The amount, I want to have 1,000 trees to start with. The position icon is by default set to volume, and I'm going to replace the position icon with my position object. So from the depot, I'm just selecting the position object and dragging it over onto the position volume so that you see the red line. What means it's gonna replace the previous one. So the emitter object is my ground plane, so I'm gonna add it. Just gonna select it, so that's the ground. I don't need any speed, so I'm gonna get rid of this the speed operator. So I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna delete this one. Rotation is fine. It's set to random 3D. That's totally fine. And let me display the original geometry itself. So if I go to, let's do Dix, let's set it to geometry. So I might need to change the shape. It's a bit large. I'm running in meters. So immediately the size it's too big. So let me quickly scale this down. All right. So the Arnold Shape operator. The only thing what you need to do is override the default shape with the Arnold Shape operator. So I'm dragging this in. That's the Arnold Shape operator. Okay, and this shape operator makes it possible to render the particles as instances of reference geometry. It supports 3ds Max objects, Arnold procedurals, Arnold volumes, alembics, and Arnold lights. So what I'm gonna do within the Arnold shape, I'm just gonna select the particle geometry object. So that is the tree. Okay, and there we are. Check the rotation. It needs to be changed to world space, because then you can start rotating the trees in the Z direction, which is quite nice. If you want to do that. And as a final tip, in the Arnold shape, you can have a scale variation. So if I change the scale variation into, let's do 50%, I do get random scales in the trees. If you want to do a Arnold procedural, you might need to change your physical materials into the Arnold standard surface material, but that's something I'm gonna do in a different in another video. So now we have all the trees being placed with Arnold based on the new P-flow Arnold shape operator, which is super nice. And of course, when I do hit render, it's gonna initialize all the objects, and the scene starts rendering.